Hi everyone, I am out. Out and about. It is 4 degrees here in Warsaw, and if you've been following the weather here in Eastern Europe, that makes it positively blissful, relatively speaking. To actually be in the positives is quite the change. And pleasant as it is to be able to make a video outside and be hatless and also gloveless, it has made this area incredibly gross and disgusting, and it's almost ankle deep in melting snow all over the place. So here's a nice little video showing you the honest kind of post-winter thaw period of Warsaw, which is super gross and horrible and disgusting. And to accompany that video, I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the things that I wish I knew before I started transitioning. Now, I was going to call this video things that I wish that they told me about being trans, but that would suggest that there is a they in the first place, and I suppose that's as good a place as any to start. That there is no unified sense or unified collective notion of what it means to be and therefore act upon being trans. Now, I did, obviously, before I started this whole thing, I was aware of, trans people just like any other group of people. There is no unified kind of groupthink that kind of connects us all into one singular vision. But it seems to be more fractured than I even imagined, where there are loads of different kind of subsets and in-groups and out-groups and ways of thinking. Oh goodness, this is especially gross here. Jesus. Ugh. My word. Especially online, it means that you get quite a lot of squabbling, infighting, and rejection of, I'm going to say, minority groups within trans communities, which is incredibly difficult because we're already a minority. And I think certain types of people seem to feel particularly lost in trans groups, especially people of colour, maybe trans men. But I've also noticed a lot of hostility directed towards people who are maybe looking or are in jobs connected with the military. Now, as I say, I'm talking about mainly online spaces that have this fractiousness, but I have to talk about those because I haven't been able to access any in-person spaces at all. I've talked about on many occasions how I just don't have any real in-person support when it comes to trans-specific people offering that level of support. And while I've come to terms with that, and it doesn't upset me as much as it used to, it does mean that you're going to get quite a significant number of us falling through the cracks. And I think there's a bit of an assumption that you have these kinds of resources available to you. You'll see a lot of people immediately, their first kinds of suggestions for people seeking support is get therapy and find a local support group. And while finding therapy is good in theory, in practice that can be really challenging. Same with finding local people. If you're just not in a situation or context where that is a thing, then you're not going to have it. And all of these people giving this as generic advice, you're just going to feel like it's rubbing it in to a certain extent. So I try to be a little bit more mindful when I give advice and guidance and suggestions these days. There's a very specific, I think, demographic of people who are online. First of all, they are maybe in a similar situation to me in that they're not finding anyone in person. They skew a little bit younger, and maybe they just prefer online conversations. So that could mean a very specific type of personality. It's no surprise to me that I think a lot of trans people, from what I understand, kind of drift away from needing to find specifically other trans folk and just forge their own path kind of independently. And I feel that's the direction that I'm starting to head into, and I'm fine with that. It would just have been nice to have had this awareness beforehand is all. I suppose the second thing that I want to talk about are the things that I guess cause me problems or issues these days. At first, I was kind of led to believe that, I'm looking down because the ground's especially mushy. Oh, Jesus, these crows. I was led to believe at first that we need to be on the lookout for people who are misgender and dead name us. And it felt that this is the vanguard, the front line of the battle between cis people and trans people. Now, oh God, I'm stuck. This is all just water. Now, I have found that people are incredibly respectful of both those things, generally speaking. Like the people that know me in my life try their best to get it right. And I've seen how mortified they are if they don't. And those instances of getting things wrong, let's call them slips, they happen so infrequently, even early on, that it was hard to really worry too much about it when it did. Because it really felt like people were just trying to be supportive and trying to do the right thing, and sometimes it just wouldn't quite work. And I became eventually a little bit more assertive. If somebody didn't get it right at first, I would just kind of let it slide. But even when I corrected people, and I only really needed to correct people, I'm going to say 4 or 5 times in total, you know, they'd apologize immediately and we'd go about our day. So what is it that affects me or kind of bothers me or bugs me? Well, it's not the personal interaction stuff, and maybe some of that is just because I have the, I guess, privilege of living in a country where I don't speak the common language here as fluently as I'd like, and so maybe I'm just mishearing where people are calling me sir or mister or whatever. But I don't know, I think to a certain extent, even if they are, I don't really care that much. I know who I am, and the words that other people use, I just don't really think I care that much about at this point. So anyway, what is it that makes me kind of frustrated these days? Well, I guess I would say admin is my primary concern. Having to go about the kind of the ins and outs of changing my name and eventually my gender, it seems so unnecessarily complicated, and it feels like there are just so many barriers and gates that are placed in front of you as just to make you think, well, who can ever change their name and stuff? I mean, the name is one thing, but I think I've almost completely written off the idea of getting my gender marker changed on my identifications and stuff, because at least still as a UK citizen, it just seems so out of reach to me financially and logistically. The process just seems so frustratingly just challenging that it just makes me not want to engage with it whatsoever. And I mean, I knew that there was going to be a problem, but I think the happiness and satisfaction that I get from seeing my name on documents and paperwork and all of that sort of thing makes a huge difference to me, and more than I ever really thought that it would. And maybe that's another thing that I'll add to the list, is the pleasures of having my name kind of plastered everywhere that I see it. It makes me feel like I really have fundamentally changed my life in a way that is much more to my liking. But does it need to be quite so difficult in getting it all changed everywhere? Especially in places where it really shouldn't be that administratively challenging, like at my work, for example, where all of these different things seem to pop up. And each time I need to go through this whole process to get my name or email or whatever changed here and there. And you just think, well, it's just, in this case, maybe it's just a reference on a web page somewhere. But even then, it's like you have to go through this whole rigmarole, and it takes weeks longer than you'd expect it to. So that's a pain in the ass. But as for misgendering and dead naming, it's less of an issue. And I suppose that's one thing that, coming back to the matter of names and the joy of seeing that everywhere, is that as I go down my the rest of my life, there's going to be more and more and more people who only ever know me as Abby. And that makes me happier even than I can describe. And it's hard to say why that is. I guess it's because, and maybe this is another thing, it's like I cherish the people in my life, especially those who've supported me like through this whole process. The people at work I talk about all the time, the people, my partner, my family to a certain extent. But there is something to be said about finding yourself in a place where people only know you as the person that is in front of them. All of that baggage is almost invisible. And all I am to them is Abby and she, and they don't know about any of the other stuff. And the further I get into this whole transitional journey, the more people that will apply to. And that's something that really excites me. That for some people, this is all they're going to know me as. And that's wonderful. And I guess a good ending to this video, the third, because we like lists of 3, don't we, as people, as humans, 3 things that I wish I'd known before I started transitioning. I suppose the third thing is I wasn't prepared for how comfortable I would be on a daily basis, just getting up and going out, and sort of normalcy of just living my life 2 years down the line after transitioning. I had a sense that such a thing was there as an option, but I never really thought that I would get there quite this quickly. And then there's the what this means in terms of my comfortable life, because I wasn't sure, would I have to be coming out to people all the time? Would I have to be explaining who I am in order to be able to access certain spaces, for instance? But I think a good example of how this works is with my yoga school. So I might have mentioned about, 5 months ago, they invited me into the female changing space. Completely I hadn't asked them to do this. I think the owner knew about my status, but it's not something that had been, I guess, advertised widely. But one day the receptionist just said to me, "Oh, Abby, would you like to go into the female space instead?" Which obviously, yes. Yes, I did. But in the back of my mind and in the front of my mind, I was anxious because I was like, well, are the other women going to be surprised or worried or something by my, I guess, the way that I saw it, intrusion into that space? Because up to then I'd been using the other men's space with increased discomfort. But that just hasn't been the case. There hasn't been any sort of questioning or weird looks, at least none that I've noticed. People have had chats with me, we've had discussions about the world, about small talk kind of stuff, which is brilliant. It's exactly what I would have wanted. Just 2 people talking about stuff in a changing room as they got ready to go to yoga or as they were ready to go home. And I suppose that's the main thing about once you've hit the kind of comfort levels that I have. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, of course. I'm talking about my own experience here, but I don't think it matters that I'm trans. I just don't. You know, as more and more people see me as Abby, and as more and more people like meet me as her, it doesn't really make any difference. Like, what does it matter what my status is? It's not as if I'm going to be having children with any of those people or dating them or anything like that. Whenever you meet any other person, you don't have to find out about their gender status whatsoever. So why should that apply to me? I don't think it should. And so while I'm happy to continue with this channel because I enjoy talking about my experiences and my life, and I love my little community here, I find myself needing to talk about it in public spaces less and less, I guess. just because I just don't think it matters, and I have a lot of other pressing things that I do think are much more important and relevant to talk about. And I guess maybe this is something that I had encountered in various spaces, but I don't think it's something that often is one of the first and foremost parts of the sort of trans discourse online, because I get a lot of that. You've got, as I say, younger people, there's people earlier in their journey, maybe there's people who want to make this much more of an urgent part of their life and what they want to talk about. But I don't know, I don't really care. Today I don't anyway. I mean, tomorrow I might have a different perspective on things. It's funny, last thing I'll talk about today and then I'm done. But as I've been walking around in this horrible, disgusting mess of a period of a season, I started thinking, is this kind of thing, this whole like gross mess of like weather, a good metaphor for being trans, pre-transition? I think it might be, because look, it's uncomfortable, it's horrible, it's kind of not very pleasant. You've got all of this mess all over the place. It's kind of dirty and messy and it's all a bit gross, and you yearn for, I guess, either summer or winter, depending. It's kind of, it could go either way. But at the same time, you know, you can find little pockets of beauty, little pockets of, I guess, happiness in this kind of weather. You can still go about your day just about, even though it's much less simple and pleasant as you'd want. And then, you know, once this goes away, you've got summertime, and it just feels like a much more comfortable way of living. And I guess for other people, you've got winter time and it's much more comfortable for them as well. Personally, I can't think of a single person who would be comfortable living in this kind of space forever. It's just horrible. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this increasingly damp and wet and horrible stroll through Warsaw. It's always great to have you here with me, and I do appreciate your company on this channel and in this space. So have yourself a wonderful rest of the day. Have a good weekend when it comes, and I'll see you all very soon. Goodbye.